I always joke and I'm like, is it even Lisa Brown if we don't have tech issues? It's just not even me. So here I am. Um, we're actually going to start out with Erin this morning, and she's going to ground us a little bit in the mission and vision regarding the Early Literacy Coaching Network. In August, she kind of just helped us understand why we went down this path. So we just want to be able to refresh our memory as we're really re-engaging with the mission and vision. So Erin, would you mind unmuting and just kind of kicking us off for this the mission and vision work this morning? So in August or last summer, we did really some deep work. We reached out to the network, you all, and asked, are you interested in supporting us and leading us through creating a mission and vision that allows people to understand what they're joining? It allows us to have some goals to reach, and it allows us to be able to speak a little bit more comprehensively about who the Early Literacy Coaching Network is. And I'm hoping that you can see this. And if so, I'm wondering, Terry, if you were on, would you be willing to read this? Sometimes it just hits differently when we can hear somebody read aloud, but this is the iteration of the mission and vision that we brought to you back in August. So Terry, if you're on and you could just unmute, that would be wonderful to hear your voice.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. I can do that. Yes, this is our original version. As a statewide early literacy coach collaborative community, we advocate for and empower educators as learners through intentionally fostering growth in critical literacy skills aligned to research and the essential literacy practices, striving to cultivate an environment of inclusion that recognizes, honors, and celebrates the identities of each other, our educator colleagues, and the children we serve. Noticing and interrupting both intentional and unintentional policies and practices that perpetuate and/or grow systemic inequities. Recognizing and celebrating that our differences are assets, not what divides us. Ensuring application of more inclusive and responsive teaching. Through these actions, we will affect lasting change that enables an equitable, just, and humane learning outcomes by empowering each other through critical love of self and others, and create opportunities for the profound and ethical education of children.
Thank you, Terry. It's great to hear from you this morning.
Thank you.
So this is the version that you saw back in August, and on the feedback form, you gave us a lot of really amazing feedback. Some of those, the feedback was captured in some themes here. And I believe that either Tracy or Sarah was going to support us with reading what these themes were. And while one of them unmutes, I just wanted to say that Dr. Yoli went through this feedback extensively. And there were some other things, like, for example, clarifying the word critical and intended audience. We're going to talk about that. But yeah, so if one of you could unmute and read this to us, please.
I can do it. Oh, you can do it, Sarah? Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. Themes of your feedback were include more explicit connections to the essential literacy practices document, include more explicit language about reading literacy, include more explicit language about coaching, include families and communities, clarify the word critical, and clarify intended audience of the statement.
Thank you, Sarah. So let's just stop and pause for a second and just take a look at these themes. So really what you invited us to do, as there was a lot of individual feedback, but putting this into themes really allowed us to capture what you felt was the heart of what we do as a network. So I loved the way that Dr. Yoli led us into that space of themes, and helped us to kind of think a little bit more globally. And then regarding the word critical, one of the reasons that we ended up using that word critical was based on the learning that we received from Dr. Yoli. So for us, it was really contextual, and it wasn't surprising to us that as a network, we needed to have more of an explanation. We needed to have more of an understanding. And then also with the intended audience for this statement at this time is really us as a coaching network. It's to help us ground ourselves. It's to help us welcome our colleagues into the network. It's to help us remind ourselves when we get lost in the shuffle, if we ever get back to intense pandemic stress, trauma, it's to help us to say, okay, hold on. This is like my North Star. This is where I know that I can have, this is my safe place. And this is, in a sense, the identity of our network. So I'm going to post this video that Dr. Yoli is doing for us a little bit later. And when we took all of that feedback and we met several more times, this is what we came up with. And today you're going to have the opportunity to be able to give some more feedback on this, specifically related to this theme. So Tracy, would you be willing to read this for us?
Sure. So our updated version of the mission and vision that we created in May of 2022, our vision statement is altering the literacy landscape, empowering educators, and practicing critical love. The mission statement is, we are a network of Michigan early literacy coaches who support all educators, students, families, and communities. Our work is grounded in humanizing literacy pedagogies and guided by the suite of essential practices in early and elementary literacy. We provide high-quality literacy coaching that recognizes, honors, and celebrates the identities of each other, all educators, students, families, and the communities we serve. Dismantle oppressive literacy policies and practices in order to uproot systemic inequities. Cultivate a literacy learning environment dedicated to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Encourages reflection and mediates thinking to increase awareness and support implementation of research-aligned literacy practices.
Thank you, Tracy. It even just sounds more beautiful and powerful. And I'm appreciating even it more as you just read that aloud. So let me explain a few things to you. The mission and vision, the hope here is that it not only captures where we are right now, but it gives us some goals and ways that we can think about how we can support the network with some future professional learning. And yesterday, we met for the members of the mission and vision creation team / revision team met, and we talked about some of these bullets because as coaches, we are trained to be able to think about what it looks to walk alongside, educators. We are trained to think about how we can very carefully explain and also put things into action. And while this is a inward facing document for the network, it's going to show up in the way that we behave, in the way that we act, in the way that we show care and ground ourselves in the work that we do with teachers, leaders, as we kind of identified here, all educators, in students and families, and ultimately communities. Even though we may not interface with students, families, and communities every day, our schools are the foundations and the hubs for our educators, families, and communities. So we started to think about, as we often do, like, what does this look to actually put into implementation? And Kathy Gray brought up a really great point, and I have permission to share this. She said, team, I'm looking at that word dismantles, and I'm immediately like internalizing that, and I'm trying to visualize, what does dismantle mean? It's a very strong word. And we had some conversation about that. And I'd like to invite Tracy to speak again and share a little bit about how she internalized that second bullet. And then we'll share a little bit more about where the conversation headed from there. Well, Tracy, thanks again for sharing.
Sure. So I guess I interpreted that statement, that dismantle, I was kind of picturing like peeling the layers of like an onion, that a lot of times when we're problem solving, we kind of do that 5 why protocol, to where we kind of keep saying, but why, but why, but why, so that we kind of get to the root of some of the problems. And so that dismantling those policies is kind of like unpeeling those layers so that we can get to the root. And then I thought it tied really nice with the uprooting the inequity. So once we can kind of get to that root of the problem, then we are able to uproot some of those systemic inequities.
Thanks, Tracy. So from there, we thought about, okay, well, what does that look like if I'm going to peel this back in my own context, in my own space, in the way in which I do work? And we talked about that, and we decided, that really depends on where each of us are in our own personal journey of understanding the relationship between literacy, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so that's why we're really excited to be able to offer presentations like what we're going to hear later this morning from Dr. Mel Duke, while we're excited to be able to offer the racial literacy course from Dr. Yoli, Make the Road by Walking. We have 14 people signed up to take the June cohort. And it's through learning like that that's going to help us understand a little bit more what it means to be actionable in this space, and what it means when we think about action. It's not necessarily outward, like what we're going to do out here, but oftentimes what we're going to do internally to help understand, to help learn. So another one that my keyboard's really touchy, I'm so sorry. Another one that we talked about was the encourages reflection and mediates thinking. So we often find ourselves in conversations with educators or leaders where we may hold information and understanding about a skill or a topic. And like Aisha had shared with us, paying attention to how we carefully paraphrase and ask those questions that allow people to think about, okay, what am I saying? What do I really mean? And that negotiation between a coach and a coachee, for lack of better words, that helps us to get down. And really, that's a way that we can create some awareness, and we can have some deep conversations about really specific things like skills, such as, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say skills, assessment, such as assessment, where we can start to look a little bit deeper at maybe why students are scoring the way that they are scoring, or what are some trends that we might see in schools. So we really hope that that explanation allows you to think about the mission and vision as we're going to go into this having questions. We're going to go into this having wondering, but what we'll do in August is we'll revisit this after we receive your feedback. And we'll do a little bit more work, just trying to hone it in and narrowing it down in a way that really represents us. And then in August, we will hopefully be able to adopt this and say, yes, we're going to work toward this. We're going to really help really think about this groundingness in our work. The last thing I want to mention before we move into feedback is looking at the vision. The prior iteration it didn't have a separate vision. So I just want to thank Kayla Horton for supporting us yesterday and helping us to kind of like step back and think more critically about a vision and how that is kind of like a shorter, bigger, broader piece of what we hope to attain through our mission. So I'm just going to read that one more time. It's altering the literacy landscape, empowering educators in practicing critical love. And the critical love is going to become more understandable as we do some more learning together. Okay, so now it's time. It's time for you to provide feedback. So let me just explain the structure. And I'm hoping that Annie can maybe capture or grab that survey. Thanks, Annie.
Put it right in for you, no problem, do that right now.
So there's an explanation up at the top. Please read that. The structure, again, is more of a reflection on the themes. So we're going to think about each one of the themes that we identified. And then if you rate, it's a Likert scale from 1 to 5. 1 is like, we missed the mark. We need to really shift and alter. And 5 is nailed it. And it literally says that on the survey. So hopefully that's motivating to you. But if you rate any of the themes as a 3 or below, the next question just asks, like, can you explain how we can improve this? Could you give us a little bit more feedback? So I believe there's 4 or 5 questions. And then at the end, there's those questions like, what else might we need to know? Or what else might you be thinking that would support this?